Hello there, welcome to Coaching with Tally. We are in a series all about increasing peace in your life. And today we're going to give you 5 ways to stop feeling overwhelmed. Talking about the concept of having margin in your life. It's a super powerful thing to add in. It's something that is simple to add and can create so much more peace in your life. So what is margin? It's that blank space, like if you think about a Word document, that blank space around where your text is and the edge of the paper. So it's like the space between your load that you're carrying in life in different areas and your capacity, your limit. So looking at what are the ways, whether it's emotional energy, physical energy, your finances, your time, where are those places that you are just maxing all the way to the edge of your capacity? And then if something goes over, it like sends you into burnout. So what are the places that you feel overwhelmed? We're going to look at some of that. We're going to talk about 5 specific things that you can apply this whole concept of margin to. So margin is that space between your loads and your limits, that space between held in reserve for unexpected situations, contingencies, so that you have a little extra capacity for things that are unforeseen, that show up in your life. So if it's you have your schedule like back to back to back, just maxed out, and then you have an emergency from a loved one, it's like, where do you even have the space to move something around and make it work? Or in your finances, you have everything maxed, and then you have an emergency situation, it's like a car repair or something, and you're like, it didn't factor for that. So it's adding margin into your life, whether it's your time, your emotional energy, your finances, your physical energy, all of that. So adding margin into your life can go a long, long way in reducing overwhelm. So if you're yearning for a relief from pressure of overload, this is for you. My name is Tally. I'm a life and personal development coach, and I work with leaders to create lives of overflowing impact in the world that are centered in joy, getting leaders aligned to who it is they most truly are, firing on all cylinders, so really looking at every important area of life, and getting you into a place where you are in overflow in life because you're creating a life that you love living. So that's what I do, and I work with clients in a private coaching capacity, group coaching. I run a mastermind, and I facilitate retreats, both domestic and international. And I was with a client this morning, a first session with a client this morning, and we did a life wheel assessment, which is kind of like a pie graph where we look at every important area of life, and we did his assessment. And the idea is that you get real clarity about where you are right now and where it is that you want to be. It's almost like creating a GPS system for your life. You get really clear about your current location, and you get really clear about where it is you're heading or you want to end up, so that you can create this really clear strategic plan and path to get there. And so we were looking at where he was at, and one of the areas we look at is rest and refuel. So it's that place that it's almost like the oxygen mask, where you put the oxygen mask on and you fill back up so that you can be in this place of overflow in life. And if you're not doing that, in the end, you end up in a place of burnout. And so his number was really low for rest and refuel. And so when we did the assessment, and we were going back through, and what would a 10 look like for you in these different areas? And when we got to rest and refuel, he's like, I just really honestly do not have time to have hobbies right now. Like I don't have time for filling up and, rest and refuel in my life. And I was like, you don't have time not to. Like your body will end up deciding this for you, or some relationship blowout will end up deciding this for you, or some financial crisis. Like you will end up in a place where you are having to get into a place of rest and refuel if you don't do it intentionally, because it's just the way it works. If you don't have any margin in your life to be filling back up, to rest, to fill up, to refuel, you'll end up in a place of burnout. If you're maxing capacity in all areas and you don't even have time weekly to spend doing things that cause you to come into a place of peace, to rest your body, to rest your mind, to take some time off, to do something nice for yourself that refuels you, you are going to end up in a place of burnout. So we talked about that for a little bit, and he agreed, and he figured out some things that he's going to start doing that are going to be actually overlap multiple things for him. His solution was, he really loves biking, like that whole thing of just getting out and wind therapy and like he just feels really free when he's out riding his bike. And he's going to do it with a meetup group so that he's meeting other friends that enjoy biking. And it also covers health and wellness. So it's like hitting 3 things at the same time, which is really beautiful. But the thing is, if we don't have that space for rest and refuel, it will eventually impact us. And I've seen it over and over again with clients that I have that they're high achievers. They love to go for it. And rest and refuel and having this margin in life doesn't seem efficient enough. Like a lot of times for them, it feels like that's extra. And if I end up with a little bit of extra time, I'll do something that is rest and refuel. But I don't have time for that. I'm like motoring toward a goal, and we don't see often that that is actually part of creating it. So I'm going to actually read you something in a minute, but I'm going to talk about 5 ways that you can add margin into your life, that you can. And by the way, there's a book called Margin by, I think it's Richard A. Swenson, and he is a doctor, I think of physics actually. But he talks about how not having margin in our lives, really the impact that he has seen in the lives of people in terms of their wellness, like physical wellness, really takes a toll when we don't have this. So it's like if you had a document and you started it at the complete left side of the page and you went all the way across, it's just a lot harder to take in the information. It's a lot harder to read it. It's the same way it is with our lives. When we max capacity and we don't have this little bit of space in our life, in our time and our physical energy, we just get completely maxed. Hey Taylor, is my book out there that I was going to read from on the table? So I'm going to tell you 5 ways that that I want to help you with this whole thing of adding margin into your life. So leaving a buffer in between activities that you have scheduled. And this is like, I'm one that tends to like to max my schedule. So this has to be intentional for me because it is a little bit counterintuitive. And I'm still in the process of intentionally putting things in, intentionally showing up 10 minutes early and just bringing a book with me or having a podcast that I want to listen to or whatever it is. Having that extra space so that when there's a traffic accident, when there's something, I'm not like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be late now. Like not having that in my life so much. Creating buffer. So leaving space between activities, scheduled activities that you have on your actual calendar, just adding a little bit of space. I've started adding a little bit of extra space between clients a lot of the time where I can, so that I can just have a few minutes to really pray for the next person, to think about them, to just feel refreshed going into the next session, so that it just feels, you know, like I feel more alive and present too, rather than rushing straight from one call into the next. Waking up earlier is another one. Waking up earlier and having a morning routine, having space that you put into your everyday where you're just like, oh, this is just my space to fill up, to be refreshed, to connect in with myself, with my creator, whoever it is that you tap into and connect with, just connect spiritually, all of that. Not overbooking yourself. So I think about airlines that like overbook intentionally, thinking that, you know, maybe somebody's not going to show up. We do that in our lives all the time, where we will actually overbook. We're trying to be so efficient with every bit of time, and I'm all for efficiency. I love creating more efficient systems, more efficient ways of doing things. But when we overbook, we actually cause so many, it's almost like your computer when you have too many tabs open and your computer's running so many different things and your operating system is overloaded and everything ends up being slower. It's a lot like that. And so just being able to clear out and not overbooking is a key. Another key thing that you can do to create more margin in your life is just to say no to some of the things that you're doing that really are not adding a lot of value. So there's a lot of things that you are doing regularly that you could either delegate or just say no to. So looking at those things, what are those things in your schedule? And then creating a to-do list and prioritizing it. And we've talked about that a little bit on some of the other days in this series on increasing your peace. But having a to-do list, prioritizing what that is, helps you get really clear about what you're up to and being intentional. So I'm going to read to you guys from a book I love called Sabbath, and I had this out in a different session with somebody else actually today. And so I'm going to read you, I think I've read one of these things to you before, but I know not everybody catches every day. So I want to read this to you because it really applies to this whole thing of having margin in your life. And this is by a man named Wayne Mueller. And this book has been really impactful for me, and I bring it on a lot of my retreats just to help people center into this place of being able to rest and refuel. And by the way, I have a retreat coming up, speaking of retreats, August 14th through the 16th. It's going to be in Hocking Hills, Ohio, and it is all about looking at all of these different areas of our life. It's kind of what I mentioned with the session that I had with this man this morning, looking at all of the areas of your life, getting really clear about where you're currently at. We're going to celebrate everything that has been created in each of these areas so far this year in 2020, and then pivot what needs to be pivoted so that we can finish the year really strong, have momentum for the second half of the year. I think there's something to, like, when we have challenge, not allowing any of that to be wasted. So I don't want 2020 to be a year for anybody where they're like, well, whatever with 2020, that was kind of a dud, and trying to reset and move on in 2021. No, like, let's take everything that has happened, use all of that challenge, and use it to fuel us for the rest of the year. So we're going to be doing that. So let me read to you. There comes a moment in our striving when more effort actually becomes counterproductive, when our frantic busyness only muddies the waters of our wisdom and understanding. I'm going to drop down. It says, we set aside time. We set aside time. So this is part of that creating margin where you actually put in extra space into your life. We set aside time to delight in being alive, to savor the gifts of creation, and to give thanks for the blessings we have missed in our necessary preoccupation with our work. So there are many things that we have in our life that we just whiz by and don't celebrate the gifts that they are to us. And when you create margin in your life, you actually have the space to enjoy some of these things. And then you also have the space for unexpected things that come up, that you can be generous with your time, that you can really be present to somebody who has something going on that you weren't planning on connecting with that day, or whatever it is. It's a day, so he's talking about it in terms of having a day every week that you just have a Sabbath, a time of rest. And so he's saying, but you can apply it to even like having margin in your life in small places. It's a time of delight, sanctuary and time. Within this sanctuary, we make ourselves available to the insights and blessings that only arise in the stillness and time. So having space, having time in our lives where we create this space so that we're not in overwhelm and busyness and constant frantic rushing around, doing all of these things and feeling that scarcity of like, there's not enough of me to go around, or there's not enough time to do everything. That busyness is not a badge of honor. And we had a whole coaching with Tally around this back a little ways. If we can find it, I'll put which one that was. So while rushing from one thing to the next can feel productive, it's actually working against us. We actually are lowering our capacity for creativity, for problem solving. We talked about multitasking the other day, and a lot of the things that does in a negative way and works against us. So this is all part of that. So our call to action today, our activation that I want to leave you with, is finding a place in your schedule, whether it's daily or weekly, just to add in space. And it can be one of those 5 things. You know, maybe it's if you don't have a time where you get up a little bit earlier and you just have some space in your morning to create a morning routine that is really delightful for you, I encourage you to start there. That's massive. I feel like if I don't get that on days, if I oversleep or I have some early morning things and I miss that time, it makes such a difference in my day. So if you don't have that, I would say add that in, or increase that to more days a week than you're currently doing. Or if it's just some moments in your day, you know, some moments throughout your day that you can add in, even if it's 5 minutes that you're just gonna sit and breathe, maybe have a drink that you enjoy, have some tea or something, and just sit and relax between things and just notice what that does for you. You know, I think there's something to the whole siesta thing, that midday just rest, refuel. Sometimes even like a 5 or 10 minute power nap for me is so refreshing. So I encourage you to find space in your day or your week or both that you start adding in this place of margin for yourself, and see if that doesn't really cut down on the overwhelm and the extra stress that you just don't have to have. So blessings to you on that, and I will see you back here tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern. Blessings.